I played football in high school, and there's all kinds of stuff all loaded up in the cisgender, ridiculous, testosterone flowing insecurities of young men. um, and I went to Brookline Public Schools, and I think to this day, it still happens. Alvin Ailey comes to Brookline High and teaches classes every year. And so it was amazing for me to see, and when you're that young as a young football player, everyone's talking about how strong you are. So it's like and one of the things that jumped off the stage at me was the strength of the dancers, right? And to physically see lifts and and you got somebody up in the air for a while. That's you got to be pretty strong to make that happen. And so it really made me. I didn't have the confidence at the time to do ballet, but it really did make me take opportunities when in social settings that I got to actually participate in dance. And I have been accused many times of dancing too much. And so for me, that was really motivating, and it really helped me broaden who I was as a man. Also open up my understanding of sexuality and what it means to be strength. I mean, what it means to be strong. And actually, at that point, really helped me begin to deal with my homophobia, which was very real as the generation that I came up in, where everyone was trying to be, as I like to refer to, as manly as the deodorant aisle, right? So all the deodorant has all of these outdoorsy, really crazy alpine musk. I'm a city dude. I don't really like being outside, and so there's there's something about that. But really, for me, art was that pathway in the beginning to have some of these important, in particular, dance conversations about manhood, about how to accept people for who and what they really are, which actually helped me to accept myself for who and what I am. So I'm very, very thankful in this place and space to have this component. And I'm not, you ladies are trained and the like, but it has been a very freeing walk for me in my path as a
Sure.
human being, but in particular as a man.
Well, I definitely didn't grow up in Boston. I grew up in Kansas, um, with very limited representation from, you know, any black or brown communities. So the way I came to arts was on a discovery of self. Like I knew I was queer early. I went to predominantly white schools for most of my life, so I've always been an other. Then on top of that, like I'm not a small sister at all. I've always been head and shoulders above the kids in my class, so I've always been an outsider. So it took me a while to get comfortable enough with being an outsider and what comes along with that. And arts has always been there to get me through it. It's been my release, it's been my therapy, it's been my confidence. Um, yeah, I was trained as a dancer, went to the American Academy of Dramatic Art in New York, but I found my love on a comedy stage. Um, and that's where I found like another platform to be able to really speak to issues that move people. And how are we going to talk about this as a community? Where is my community? Because that was something else that arts helped me find. Like I feel like whatever category you fit in, like you were talking about, brother, if you are a man, then manhood looks like this. If you're whatever, then it looks like this. So I'm like, everything I'm hearing, it doesn't feel right in my soul. I don't know what it is, but let me figure it out. So, a dance floor, a studio, um, a stand-up comedy stage gave me the opportunities to begin to figure that out and construct whatever this is right now. Um, and I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Um, and it always has to be justice focused because as I was always an educator, I've been with Boston Ballet since 2006, and spent most of my career in youth work and always an educator first, but an educator in the way where it was justice focused, where myself and the young people talk about amplifying voice. And how do you do that? How do you claim your space? How do you make spaces your own? And since I came to Boston Ballet in 2006, it's like I felt like an outsider initially. There weren't a lot of teachers of color in that space. There definitely weren't any 6'1" teachers walking around in there. We didn't even have a community engagement department at that point. But if I now feel like this institution, this ballet, this dance form is my home, so I got to do what I got to do, make sure that's reality for other people.
Mm-hmm. That's
For
awesome.
for both of you, what I find resonates with me is the idea of arts being a space where you can be immersed, where you can learn about yourself, learn about the world. It's I wouldn't say judgment-free zone, but it's a space that can be safe. And it seems as though you both found a safe avenue to explore a variety of issues. For myself, I am a dancer behind a closed door at 2 in the morning, or in my car, and I'm rocking out. But that's about any time anyone would see me dance. But I remember as a young kid, I was always lost in my thoughts, making stories. I wrote and illustrated a few children's books when I was a child. I'm a professional classically trained violist, and had I not done that, I would have done graphic design, and was always just seeing things, and would go into a walk-in closet with a book and a blank piece of paper and a pencil, and just create a story. Literally immerse myself in a space that wasn't my immediate, be lost in my imagination, and put together, facilitate environments where things could happen that I was able to bring to life through my imagination. And the arts, and in my case, music specifically, allowed me to do that. I very much am an introverted person. I close that door because that's me behind that closed door, to be able to dance and move and groove. And I am able to communicate in a way, sort of have an extended voice through my instrument, through music. And maybe that's a parallel through movement. Maybe that's a parallel in other art forms. But it allowed me to be able to have a deeper appreciation and understanding for my sort of weird, quirky self in ways that can be translatable to others. And I very much have found, when I was a one-on-one private violin viola instructor, working with largely Haitian and Black students, there was a intimacy that we could find strength in through music, to be able to talk about, it's not really about the viola here. What I want is for you to be able to understand that you can accomplish whatever you say you can, right? There's more humanity than, in my case, a bow and a wooden box that has some strings on it. But there's a point of connection, a vulnerability that arts brings, to be able to have those conversations of growth, whether it's internally or working in intimate spaces, which is how I like to work, or on a stage with a whole, well, COVID-friendly size audience. Many ways, I think, to engage in that space.
There's something also there in terms of what Ashley's talking about, where having these young people be seen and know that there is a actual place and space for them in all music. Because I think there's this component of classical isn't our thing, or the like. I think there has to be ownership, and I wouldn't say displacement, but placement and ownership of that space for folks to have their voice heard, to have their viola heard, to have their dance seen and felt. So I think that's another piece that, and I know that there's now mashups between hip hop and ballet, which
I
is
play
really
ballerinas. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So you have the young people saying, you know what, we're gonna add a whole lot of extra flavor that many of the people who thought of this genre of dance, this canon, would never have thought of. But we're going to take that and take it to this next level. And I know there's the hip hop violinists who travel the country and play R&B and rap on violins. So I just think there's this, as I spoke before, about just this language and this exchange that we are able to participate in the genre of arts.
Absolutely. That's what I love, and I'm such a fan of the work that Ashley does with Councillor Skins. We actually first came in contact with each other when I was still working at the Boston Children's Museum. And what they do as far as having space for these conversations to look at something different. And I can only speak from my experience because I didn't grow up with any exposure to classical music in that way. But the conversations that they were having, right now, it's relevant to me. So that's the other thing I want to make sure that our administrators do, or our teachers do. How do you make it relevant to the curriculum that's going on at home? How do you have conversations across diaspora?
You make me think of my class. I teach at the Laundry School of Music. I think I'm in the history department. I actually don't know who I report to, but let's say it's history, a course on composers of the African diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
And we were discussing Afro-Latino composers and reading an article. And the main point that I wanted to get across for my students: any name that you don't know, you underline. Any name that you do, put a box around. Maybe we had 2 boxes out of 50 names that were referenced, but the idea being, take that information that you don't know and act on it. Learn, research, be curious, foster your own your own sense of awareness in that sense, and feel free to sit in that space of lack of awareness. It hadn't been presented to you for, as large as the world is, and is for as many centuries of creativity. We can't have all of that in our head all the time. But when you're approached with something that is new, embrace it, understand it, value it, and dive in. I don't see that kind of attitude sort of drilled into brains as much as I would like.
Right.
Ultimately, I think we'll have just a higher sense of empathy all around if faced with something new, there isn't a judgment or a fear, but there is a humility, actually, that's reached. So yeah, when I think about Together We Move, I think so much about coalition building and community building, and making sure that I often say with my team at Councillor Skins, what is a mission-aligned project, and who are mission-aligned people that we can have conversations with, that we can broach new partnerships with, even if we aren't seeing eye to eye. How can we get to a point where we're mission-aligned, and what is that mission? So moving together has so much to do with conversation, with clarity, with trust, with time in a world that wants to rush things, time to be able to build those relationships, and honoring those relationships.
Sure. Together We Move, for me in this time, a pandemic means a couple of things. For one, I I have to be intentional about moving together within my community because it's been fractured by many things. Like many of us have gone through a lot of loss, a lot of changes, a lot of disruptions. So just resetting what where my community is, to the point that you raised, Ashley, like what that looks like and re-envisioning that constantly. Um, if institutions can't continue to say, well, that's the way that we've always done it. So I, as a human being, can't continue to say that. So I have to be in a place of repurpose, um, leaning on new systems of thought. Um, yeah, because it's no longer possible, and it never was a possibility. But it's even clearer now how much we need each other to get all of this work done.
Yeah, together we move. To me means I don't win, Alicia doesn't win, Ashley doesn't win unless we all win. We, as a people, have so much work to do um, for each other and to advance as a people and as a community. That means that we have to take up each other's issues and be intersectional in the way that we approach things. I love young people for coming up with that word, because that word did not exist when I was in college. But that intersectionality of moving forward, and I think in particular as at the Boston Ballet, there are some amazing resources that the organization has. And we have to, as an organization, really go back to brass tacks. Hey, we've been doing city dance for 30 years. How do we do it better, bigger, badder, and better for the next 30 years? How do we integrate those young people so we have a whole stage full of Isaac Akipis, who came for the Boston Public Schools, right? How is it that we have a whole section of Ashley's, making it happen in the funky viola? And so, like, how do we continue as an organization to move that forward? And then also with the conversation that we had this past summer around diversity, equity, inclusion, how are we consistently looking at ourselves in the mirror, not as Boston Ballet? Because, by the way, the stuff that happens on the stage is amazing. That's awesome. But how are we making sure that the people who even are on the stage or off the stage are supported? The people who are supposed to be there to support the people who need to be supported, that those folks are supported, and that those individuals have the agency to name the things that they need. And just as we do for a whole host of other things, that we address and meet those needs with the resources that are needed. That, to me, is together we are able to move as a people, as an organization, as a community, as a city, and as a state. Our whole connectivity forward.